Sri Lanka is voting for its next president today after the 2022 economic meltdown. About 17 million of Sri Lanka's 22 million people are eligible to vote. The voting across the country's 13,134 polling stations will close at 4 p.m. local time. Vote counting is expected to start at 9:30 p.m. At 12 p.m. local time, the voter turnout in all districts was 40% and more. The only exceptions being Matara and Muneragala. In both districts, the turnout was under 35%. 35 cases of election law violations were reported during the first 3 hours of polling. Minister of Public Security was said curfew will be imposed if the need arises, and it will be enforced strictly if violence erupts. Now, Sri Lankan President Ranil Wickremesinghe, he called this election a turning point for the country as he cast his vote. Wickremesinghe is running for re-election as an independent candidate. Building on the success of his efforts to steer Sri Lanka out of the 2022 economic meltdown, which triggered massive protests and forced Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee the country. Wickremesinghe is being challenged by Anura Kumara Dissanayake from the Janata Vimuthi Piramuna party and the Sajith Premadasa of the Samagi Jana Balavegaya party. Now, the election results will be declared on Sunday. A total of 38 candidates are vying to win the top executive post in this South Asian nation. Sri Lanka's first past-the-post system allows voters to cast 3 preferential votes for their chosen candidates, with the candidate securing 50% of the votes or more declared the winner. Meanwhile, a total of 116 representatives from various international election observation organizations have arrived in Sri Lanka to monitor the upcoming presidential election. Sri Lanka's election process is complicated, and at a time when there is no front-runner, the election could produce a no clear winner. So what happens then? In our next report, my colleague Ananya Datta explains more.
Sri Lanka's presidential elections follow a unique process. Designed in 1981, voters participate in a limited ranked voting system, which basically means that they can express up to 3 preferences for the president. Let's break that down for you. Imagine you're a voter and you have head out on election day. Now this year there are record 39 candidates. But to keep it simple, let's consider a hypothetical situation with just 5 candidates: A, B, C, D and E. According to the rule, you can have 3 preferences. Let's say your first preference is A, second is B and third is C. Once all votes are counted and A gets over 50% of the votes, she or he is the clear winner. But there can also be another situation where no candidate gets over 50% of votes immediately. In that case, all candidates except the 2 with the highest number of votes are eliminated. And after this, the second and third preferences from the eliminated candidates are redistributed. So in our hypothetical situation, all votes of B, D and E will be transferred to A and C. And the process will continue until one of the 2 candidates secures an outright majority. What's interesting is that in practice, this system has rarely been used in Sri Lanka. So much so that many citizens are unaware that they can rank multiple candidates. The reason is that since the start of elections, only one candidate from either major parties have become a clear winner. This time it might be different. More than 17 million people are eligible to vote. The results are expected within a day of voting, and the winner must be sworn in within 2 weeks.
Well, for more on the elections in Sri Lanka, we are now joined by our correspondent Dasuni Athoda, who is joining us live from Colombo in front of a polling station. Dasuni, you've been getting us the latest from the elections in Sri Lanka. These are touted as a historic elections. Tell me what you can see around you and what is the latest that you can get it for us from the ground.
Well, with just 2 more hours to go for polls to close, in many electorates, it has now been confirmed that the voter turnout has neared or in some cases even exceeded that 50% voter turnout mark, which is really good because comparing with last year's election, the complete voter turnout in the 2019 presidential election stood at a little over 80%, which is largely positive. And there is a huge belief that this election, given how tightly contested it is, that this election might even exceed the previous statistic of over 80%. However, we must also consider that following Sri Lanka's 2022 financial crisis, there was mass migration and brain drain that resulted in a lot of these registered voters leaving the country. So that is a statistic we will see towards the end of the day today. And what we will also be excited to see is how these votes will actually turn out into valid votes, given that this is a complicated voting process. You are given the option of voting for three candidates, three preferred candidates, and the validity of these votes will be seen tomorrow.
Dasani, while you say that these are very crucial elections, have you been able to speak to people around you, and what is the sense that you're getting? What is the sentiment that they're carrying when they come in to vote today?
Absolutely. All the voters who we've spoken to over the past few hours are quite confident and are hopeful that their respective candidate will win. And each of them have a reason as to why they are casting their vote and why they stand by or behind their preferred candidate. Many believe stability is what is important, while a lot of the others also believe that a change in reforms, a change in taxes, a change in the cost of living is what is needed. Something that is also interesting to see is that the voter demographic and what they believe in is also largely different. If you speak to a younger voter or a first-time voter, largely their issues would be unbearable taxes or the high costs of living. But if you speak to a seasoned voter, a voter who has probably voted, let's say, 3 to 4 presidential elections, what they believe in is that Sri Lanka must be economically stable for things to be okay in this country, which was something interesting that we saw. Nevertheless, all of these voters who walked into these polling booths are quite confident and are equally backing each and every candidate, especially the top 3 frontrunners. That include the incumbent president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, as well as the opposition leader and leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, Sajit Premadasa, and the leader of the National People's Power Movement, Anura Kumara Disanayake. So this is definitely going to be a tightly contested election with the high possibility of the preferential voting system coming into play in Sri Lanka for the first time.
Thanks so much, Dasani, for joining us with the latest on those all-important elections in the island nation. And we will keep coming back to you to get us the latest from there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.